Welcome to Peacetime Story, a place where your mind can rest and your heart can find calm. Here, every story is told with love, comfort, and a touch of mystery, designed to gently guide you into a world of relaxation and peaceful sleep. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to subscribe and become a part of our Peacetime Story family. Together, we'll create a space where every night ends with calmness, comfort, and sweet dreams. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's begin tonight's journey. Murder at the Manor. Poirot's Gentle Night of Secrets. Chapter 1. The Shadow Falls. The rain descended in relentless sheets, cloaking the English countryside in a veil of melancholy as Hercule Poirot's motor car wound its way through the sodden lanes toward Blackthorn Manor. It was the autumn of 1928, and the world seemed draped in the somber hues of a Turner painting, all mist and shadow. Poirot, impeccable in his tailored overcoat, adjusted his hat against the drizzle, his mustache a beacon of symmetry amidst the chaos of the storm. The manor loomed ahead, its Gothic turrets piercing the low clouds, its windows aglow with an eerie warmth that belied the tragedy within. The air carried the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, a fitting prelude to the grim task awaiting the detective. Inspector Japp awaited him at the manor's grand entrance, his face etched with the weariness of a man too accustomed to death. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes," he said, his voice rough beneath the patter of rain. "It's a bad business, this. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, stabbed clean through the heart in his study. No sign of a struggle, no witnesses, or so they claim. The guests are holed up in the drawing-room, and they're jumpy as cats in a thunderstorm." Poirot's green eyes gleamed with that peculiar intensity that signaled the stirring of his little gray cells. "Jumpy, mon ami? Bon. The guilty heart, it betrays itself in such moments. Let us proceed with order and method. First, the scene of the crime, and then these nervous guests." Japp led the way through the cavernous foyer, where a chandelier cast flickering shadows across portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The manor exuded an air of faded grandeur, its oak-paneled walls groaning under the weight of time and secrets. They ascended a sweeping staircase, the carpet muffling their steps, until they reached the study door. It was ajar, revealing a scene frozen in tragedy. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, a man of 60 with a hawkish nose and iron-gray hair, slumped over his mahogany desk, a silver-handled dagger protruding from his chest. Blood had pooled on the blotter, staining a half-finished letter. The room smelled of old leather, ink, and the metallic tang of death. Poirot's gaze swept the room with the precision of a cartographer mapping uncharted lands. The study was a monument to Sir Reginald's ego. Shelves lined with ledgers of his industrial empire, a towering portrait of the man himself glaring down from above the fireplace, and a heavy velvet curtain framing a window that overlooked the rain-swept garden. The window was slightly open, admitting a chill draught and the faint patter of rain. Muddy footprints, blurred by the deluge, trailed from the window to the desk, suggesting an intruder or a clever ruse. A scrap of green silk, torn and delicate, lay clutched in Sir Reginald's lifeless hand, its vibrant hue a stark contrast to the somber scene. "The door was locked from the inside when we found him," Japp explained, pointing to the key still in the lock. "The butler, Jenkins, broke it down at 10:15 p.m., after Lady Eleanor raised the alarm. No one claims to have heard a thing, though the dinner ended at 9:30, and the guests swear they were elsewhere." Poirot knelt by the window, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of a footprint. "The rain, it obliterates much, but not all," he murmured. "These prints, they are indistinct, yet they speak. And this silk, curieux, non? It is not a fabric one wears lightly." He rose, brushing his hands. "Now, to the drawing-room. The human heart. It reveals what the mud conceals." The drawing-room was a study in contrasts. A roaring fire cast a warm glow, yet the atmosphere was frigid with suspicion. The guests sat in uneasy silence, their postures rigid, their eyes darting like trapped creatures. Poirot stood at the threshold, his presence commanding attention as he surveyed the assembled company with the acuity of a falcon. Each face told a story, and he intended to read them all. Lady Eleanor Hawthorne, the widow, was a statuesque woman of 40, her raven hair swept into an elegant chignon, her mourning dress of black crepe tailored to perfection. Her eyes, like chips of ice, held a glacial calm, but her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, trembled faintly, betraying a turmoil beneath her composure. Psychological profile. A woman of refined intellect, honed by years of navigating her husband's domineering nature, she masked her emotions with the precision of a diplomat. Motive. The vast Hawthorne fortune, or perhaps freedom from a marriage that had long since turned to ash. Captain Arthur Langley, a war hero in his 30s, cut a striking figure with his broad shoulders and a jagged scar marring his left cheek. His dark eyes burned with a restless energy, and his fingers drummed an impatient rhythm on the arm of his chair. Psychological profile. Proud and volatile. Haunted by the specter of the Great War, he wore his courage like a badge, yet his temper simmered close to the surface. Motive. A bitter feud with Sir Reginald over a failed business venture that had cost Langley his savings. Miss Clara Beaumont, a novelist of 25, was delicate as a porcelain figurine, with auburn curls and a nervous habit of twisting her pearl necklace. Her wide eyes darted about, as if seeking an escape from the room's oppressive air. Psychological profile. Sensitive and imaginative, her charm concealed a desperate ambition to rise above her humble origins, though secrets weighed heavily on her heart. Motive. Sir Reginald's threat to expose a scandalous indiscretion from her past. Dr. Mortimer Gray, a physician in his 50s, had thinning hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, as if life itself were a puzzle he could not solve. His hands were steady, but his gaze avoided Poirot's, flitting to the fire instead. Psychological profile. Methodical and secretive, he craved control, his calm exterior masking a mind that brooded over slights. Motive. Sir Reginald's refusal to fund his experimental medical research. Mrs. Agnes Withers, the housekeeper, was a wiry woman of 60, her pinched face framed by a severe bun. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, missed nothing, though her deferential posture suggested a lifetime of servitude. Psychological profile. Dutiful yet resentful, she harbored grudges beneath her servile demeanor, her loyalty to the Manor a brittle facade. Motive. Years of mistreatment by Sir Reginald, who wielded his authority like a lash. Poirot inclined his head, his voice smooth as polished marble. Mesdames et messieurs, a tragedy has struck Blackthorn Manor. Sir Reginald Hawthorne lies dead, murdered by a hand most cunning. I, Hercule Poirot, declare that the truth shall not elude me. Let us establish the facts with order and precision. Japp recounted the evening's events. The dinner, a tense affair marked by Sir Reginald's barbed remarks, had concluded at 9:30 p.m. The guests claimed to have dispersed, some to their rooms, others to the drawing-room or library. At 10:15 p.m., Lady Eleanor, unable to find her husband, had summoned Jenkins, who discovered the body. The dagger, a family heirloom, was kept in the study, accessible to all. The green silk and muddy footprints were the only physical clues, though the locked door suggested an impossible crime. Lady Eleanor spoke first, her voice cool as the rain outside. "My husband was a difficult man, Monsieur Poirot. His enemies were many, but I was in my room, reading, when he was killed. I heard nothing but the storm." Captain Langley scoffed, his scar twitching. "Difficult? He was a tyrant, plain and simple, ruined good men for sport. But I was in the billiard room, practicing my shots, alone." Miss Beaumont's voice quavered, her fingers tightening on her necklace. "I was in the library writing. The storm kept me awake, but I saw no one near the study." Dr. Gray adjusted his spectacles, his tone measured. "I was in my guest room, reviewing patient notes. A physician's work is never done, even in such a place." Mrs. Withers, polishing a candelabra with methodical precision, murmured, "I was in the kitchen, preparing the morning's bread. The servants' stairs are far from the study, sir." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind cataloguing their words. And yet, the locked door, the green silk, the footprints, they tell a story of their own. The little gray cells, they listen, and they do not forget. He returned to the study with Jap, examining the desk more closely. A smudged ink blot caught his eye, as if a pen had been dropped in haste. The half-finished letter, addressed to an unknown recipient, hinted at a financial dispute. "Curieux," Poirot said, tapping his temple. "The ink, the letter, the silk, they are threads in a tapestry of deceit. But who is the weaver?" As they left the study, the butler, Jenkins, approached, his face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, I must speak. I saw Captain Langley near the study at 10 hours p.m., though he claims he was elsewhere." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Merci, Monsieur Jenkins. Your observation, it is most illuminating. A discrepancy in the timeline, perhaps, or a red herring cast into the waters." The storm outside raged on, its fury a mirror to the turmoil within Blackthorn Manor. Poirot knew the truth lay buried beneath layers of lies, but his little gray cells were already at work, piecing together the puzzle of Sir Reginald's death. Chapter 2. The Web of Motives. The storm's fury had not abated, as Hercule Poirot paced the study of Blackthorn Manor, his polished shoes whispering against the Persian rug. The rain lashed the windows, casting rivulets of shadow across the room, where the late Sir Reginald Hawthorne's presence lingered like a spectre. The portrait above the fireplace glowered, its subject's stern eyes seeming to challenge Poirot's scrutiny. The detective's own eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, missed nothing. The smudged ink blot on the desk, the muddy footprints fading into the carpet, the scrap of green silk still clutched in the victim's rigid hand. Each detail was a thread in the tapestry of murder, and Poirot intended to unravel it with his customary precision. Inspector Japp, standing by the door, rubbed his hands against the chill. "What do you make of it, Poirot? A locked room, a dagger, and a house full of people with reasons to hate the man. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, only the needle's got blood on it." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Mon ami, the needle, it reveals itself when one examines the hay with care. The locked door, the silk, the footprints, they are not mysteries but signposts. Let us follow them, but first I must speak with these suspects. The human heart, it speaks louder than footprints in the mud." Japp led the way back to the drawing room, where the fire had dwindled to embers, casting a pall over the gathered company. The suspects sat in uneasy silence, their faces etched with varying degrees of fear, defiance, and calculation. Poirot had requested private interviews, and one by one they were summoned to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes and heavy with the scent of old paper. The storm's rumble provided a fitting backdrop as Poirot probed the minds and motives of those who had dined with death. First came Lady Eleanor Hawthorne, her black crepe dress rustling like a whisper of mourning. She seated herself with the grace of a queen, though her hands, clasped tightly, betrayed a tremor. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, her voice cool as the rain, "I assure you, I was in my room, reading, when my husband met his end. His death is a shock, but not, perhaps, a surprise. He was a man who made enemies as easily as others draw breath." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Madame, you speak of enemies, yet you inherit his fortune, a considerable sum, na? And your marriage, was it one of affection or obligation?" Her eyes flickered, a crack in her composure. Reginald was demanding. His wealth was his power, and he wielded it ruthlessly. "Yes, I inherit, but I cared little for his money. Freedom from his temper was prize enough." She paused, her lips tightening. "I heard nothing, saw nothing. I was alone." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, madame. For now, that is all." Next was Captain Arthur Langley, whose military bearing did little to mask his agitation. He strode into the library, his scar a livid slash across his cheek, and sat with the rigidity of a man facing a firing squad. "I've nothing to hide, Poirot," he said brusquely. "Hawthorne was a swine, swindled me out of my savings with that cursed railway venture, promised riches, delivered ruin. But murder? I'd have faced him man to man, not stabbed him in the dark like some coward." Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin. "A man of honor, Captain, yet the butler, Jenkins, places you near the study at 10 p.m. You claim the billiard room. A curious discrepancy, non?" Langley's face reddened, his fist clenching. "Jenkins is mistaken. I was shooting billiards alone. The man's old, his eyes aren't what they were. I didn't go near the study." Poirot's voice remained soft, almost soothing. "Calm yourself, Captain. The truth, it does not yield to temper. We shall see what the little gray cells uncover." Miss Clara Beaumont entered next, her delicate frame trembling as she twisted her pearl necklace. Her auburn curls framed a face pale with anxiety, her eyes darting like those of a cornered doe. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, "I was in this very library writing when it happened. The storm kept me awake, and my novel, it demands my attention. I heard nothing, I swear." Poirot's gaze softened, but his questions were sharp. "Mademoiselle, Sir Reginald, he knew something of your past, did he not? A secret, perhaps, that could ruin your reputation as a novelist?" Her breath caught, and the tears welled in her eyes. He knew of an indiscretion from my youth. A foolish mistake, long buried. He threatened to expose it unless I paid him. I gave what I could, but he demanded more. But murder? I could never. Poirot patted her hand gently. "Courage, mademoiselle. The truth, it protects the innocent." Dr. Mortimer Gray followed, his scholarly demeanor marred by a nervous tick at the corner of his mouth. He adjusted his spectacles repeatedly, avoiding Poirot's gaze. "I was in my guest room, reviewing patient notes," he said, his voice clipped. "Sir Reginald's death is unfortunate, but I had no part in it. My work is my life, Monsieur Poirot, and I have no time for vendettas." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet Sir Reginald refused to fund your research, Doctor. A blow to your ambitions, no? A man of science, he values control, yet rejection. It stings." Gray's hands shook slightly, betraying his calm. "He called my work a fool's errand. I disagreed, but murder? Absurd. I deal in life, not death." Finally, Mrs. Agnes Withers, the housekeeper, entered, her pinched face set in a mask of deference. Her movements were precise, her eyes sharp, though she kept them lowered. "I was in the kitchen, sir, preparing the morning's bread," she said softly. "The servants' stairs are far from the study. I know nothing of what happened." Poirot tilted his head. "Madame Withers, you served Sir Reginald for many years. A man of exacting standards, no? The green silk in his hand, perhaps from a guest's attire, or something else?" Her fingers tightened on her apron. "I wouldn't know, sir. The master was unkind at times, but I did my duty. That silk, it's not familiar to me." Poirot dismissed her with a nod, his mind already weaving the threads of their testimonies. Each suspect had a motive: money, revenge, secrets, and each alibi was fragile, like glass awaiting a hammer's blow. The butler's claim about Captain Langley lingered, a potential clue or a deliberate misdirection. Poirot returned to the study where Japp awaited, his notebook filled with scribbled observations. "The silk, Japp," Poirot said, holding the scrap aloft. "It is too vibrant, too deliberate. A guest would not wear such a fabric unnoticed, yet it matches no attire described. And the footprints, large, yet not overlarge. A man's, perhaps, but worn by whom?" Japp scratched his head. "You're thinking someone planted it, to throw us off?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The little gray cells, they ponder. Let us examine the desk once more." The smudged ink blot drew Poirot's attention again. Beside it lay a pen, its nib bent as if dropped in haste. The half-finished letter, addressed to "my dear friend," spoke of a financial dispute and a warning. "You shall regret crossing me." Poirot's fingers traced the paper's edge. A man writes such words in anger, yet he is interrupted, by death perhaps, or by design. He moved to the window where the muddy footprints told a muddled tale. The rain had blurred their edges, but their size suggested a shoe neither too large nor too small, a deliberate ambiguity. "The murderer, he wishes us to chase shadows," Poirot mused. "But shadows, they have substance when one knows where to look." Back in the drawing room, Poirot observed the suspects' interactions. Lady Eleanor's gaze lingered on Dr. Gray, not with warmth, but with a guarded intensity, as if measuring an opponent. Captain Langley and Miss Beaumont exchanged heated whispers, their voices too low to discern. Mrs. Withers, serving tea, moved with the silence of a ghost, her ears attuned to every word. Poirot noted a psychological clue. Dr. Gray's steady hands, so praised by his patients, faltered as he lifted his cup, a tremor betraying an unspoken fear. As the clock struck midnight, the storm's ferocity seemed to mirror the tension within Blackthorn Manor. Poirot knew the truth lay hidden in the interplay of motives and lies. The green silk, the footprints, the stopped clock at 9:45 p.m. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. "The web," Poirot murmured to Japp. "It is intricate, but not unbreakable. We must tug at its threads, mon ami, and see which unravel." The night stretched on, heavy with secrets, as Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly to pierce the darkness of Sir Reginald's murder. Chapter 3. The unseen threads. The first pale fingers of dawn crept over the horizon. dispelling the remnants of the storm that had besieged Blackthorn Manor through the night. The rain had ceased, leaving in its wake a world sodden and subdued, the air crisp with the scent of wet earth and bruised foliage. Dew clung to the manicured lawns like a scattering of diamonds, and the manor itself stood sentinel, its ivy-clad walls glistening under the nascent light. Hercule Poirot, ever the early riser, had already donned his impeccable attire, a charcoal suit of exquisite cut, and descended to the ground floor, where Inspector Japp awaited him in the foyer, nursing a cup of steaming tea provided by a subdued servant. "Poirot, you look as fresh as if you'd slept in a feather-bed," Japp grumbled, his eyes ringed with fatigue. "Me? I've been up half the night pondering that locked door. It's impossible, I tell you. Unless the killer flew in through the window like some phantom." Poirot's mustache curved in a subtle smile. "Impossible, mon ami? No, the impossible is merely the improbable in disguise. The door, the window, the footprints, they are but illusions crafted by a cunning mind. Come, let us venture into the garden. The morning light, it reveals what the night conceals." They stepped out onto the terrace, the gravel crunching underfoot as they made their way to the garden path. The footprints from the study window were more discernible now, though still blurred by the deluge. They led across the lawn to a rose arbor, its thorns arching like the spines of some ancient guardian. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand hovering over a particularly sharp thorn stained with a dark speck. Dried blood. "Regardez, Japp. A careless murderer, perhaps, who pricked themselves in haste, or a deliberate misdirection to suggest a struggle in the shadows." Japp whistled softly. "Blood on a thorn. Could be from anyone. But if it's the killer's, we might match it to a wound on one of the suspects." Poirot rose, dusting his knees. "Precisely. We shall inspect hands and arms discreetly. But remember, the clever criminal, they anticipate such scrutiny. This blood, it may be a thread leading us astray." Returning indoors, Poirot requested access to Sir Reginald's desk once more. With Japp's assistance, he methodically searched its drawers, his fingers probing for hidden mechanisms. A faint click rewarded his efforts. A concealed compartment sprang open, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a crimson ribbon. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he perused them. Ah, the unseen threads begin to emerge. These are missives to Miss Beaumont, demanding payment for silence on her youthful indiscretion. Blackmail, mon ami, is a motive as old as time, potent as poison. Japp's brow furrowed. Hawthorne was extorting her, the cad. That gives her a solid reason to want him dead. Poirot nodded, tucking the letters into his pocket. Oui, but blackmail, it often ensnares more than the victim. Who else knew of these letters? The housekeeper, perhaps, in her duties, or another who rifled through his affairs. The web tightens. The breakfast hour arrived, and the suspects gathered in the dining room, a chamber resplendent with silver and crystal, though the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken accusations. The long oak table was laden with porridge, kippers, and toast, but appetites were scant. Poirot observed them keenly, his position at the head allowing an unobstructed view. Lady Eleanor Hawthorne presided with her customary poise, her black attire a stark contrast to the room's opulence. Yet her eyes, usually so composed, avoided Dr. Gray's across the table, as if his presence stirred an unwelcome memory. Captain Arthur Langley attacked his breakfast with military precision, his scar twitching as he glanced at Miss Beaumont, who sat pale and withdrawn, her fork toying with uneaten food. Dr. Gray's furrowed brow deepened. His hands, usually so steady, shaking slightly as he poured tea, spilling a drop onto the saucer. Mrs. Agnes Withers moved about like a shadow, refilling cups with mechanical efficiency, her pinched face betraying nothing but her eyes lingering on each guest with a sharpness that belied her servile role. Poirot sipped his café au lait, his voice breaking the silence. A somber morning, mes amis. The storm has passed, yet the clouds of suspicion remain. Perhaps a conversation. It will illuminate the shadows. Captain Langley grunted. What's there to say? Hawthorne was a beast, but I didn't kill him. Ask that butler of yours. He's the one spinning tales about, me being near the study. Miss Beaumont's voice was a whisper. And those letters. If they come out, I'm ruined. But I swear I was in the library. Dr. Gray cleared his throat. We all have our grievances, but murder benefits no one. My research will proceed without his funding, eventually. Lady Eleanor's lips thinned. Reginald's secrets died with him, I hope. This house has seen enough scandal. Mrs. Withers, pausing in her duties, murmured, The master kept many secrets, milady, but I know my place. Poirot's gaze sharpened at her words, but he said nothing, instead noting the psychological undercurrents, the avoided glances, the trembling hands, the forced civility masking deeper animosities. As breakfast concluded, a young servant girl, Elsie, approached Poirot hesitantly in the hallway. Beggin' your pardon, sir, but I noticed something odd last night. The study clock. It was stopped at 9:45 p.m. when we found the master, but I swear I heard him dictating letters at 10:00 p.m. from the hall. Poirot's eyes lit with interest. You are certain, mademoiselle, this is most important. Elsie nodded vigorously. Yes, sir. His voice was clear as day, arguing with someone, though I couldn't make out who. Merci, Elsie. Your observation, it is a thread of gold in this tapestry. Poirot conferred with Japp in the library, the letters spread before them. The clock stopped at 9:45 p.m., yet Sir Reginald lived until at least 10:00 p.m. Someone tampered with it to confuse the timeline. The murderer, they wished to suggest the deed occurred earlier, perhaps to bolster an alibi. Japp paced. But who? And why? If the body was warm at 10:15, the killing couldn't have been much before. Precisely, Poirot replied. The warmth indicates the murder was recent, yet the clock lies. A clever ruse, none? And this argument Elsie overheard. Who was the other party? They summoned the suspects again, this time in pairs, to probe these new revelations. First, Lady Eleanor and Dr. Gray, whose interaction at breakfast had piqued Poirot's curiosity. Madame, Doctor, Poirot began, you avoid each other's gaze. Is there a connection beyond this tragedy? Lady Eleanor stiffened. Dr. Gray treated Reginald for his ailments, nothing more. Gray nodded curtly. Professional courtesy, nothing untoward. Yet Poirot sensed a lie, a thread unseen but palpable. Next, Captain Langley and Miss Beaumont. Captain, you whisper with Mademoiselle Beaumont. An alliance, perhaps? Langley flushed. We share a common enemy in Hawthorne. He ruined us both, but that's all. Miss Beaumont's eyes filled with tears. He held my secret over me like a sword, but I didn't argue with him last night. I was alone. Poirot dismissed them, turning to Mrs. Withers alone. Madam, you know the Manor's secrets. The letters. Did you discover them in your cleaning? Her face remained impassive. I clean, sir, but I don't pry. The master's desk was his domain. As the interviews concluded, Poirot wandered the grounds once more, his mind a whirlwind of deductions. The blood on the thorn. No suspect bore a visible wound, yet a glove or sleeve might conceal it. The green silk, unmatched to any garment, suggested a plant from elsewhere. Perhaps the servants' quarters, where such fabrics might be found in linens or curtains. In the rose arbor, he examined the thorn again, noting its position, low, as if snagged by someone crouching or fleeing hastily. The murderer, they staged the footprints, but this blood, it is too convenient, he murmured. Back inside, Jap reported a discovery. A pair of muddy shoes hidden in the boot room, sized for a man but caked with garden soil. Could be Langley's, Jap said. Poirot shook his head. Or place to implicate him. The web, it is woven with misdirection. As noon approached, the Manor's atmosphere grew thicker, the unseen threads of motive and deceit drawing tighter. Poirot knew the truth hovered close, waiting for his little gray cells to seize it. The blackmail letters, the stopped clock, the bloodied thorn. Each was a clue, but the puzzle demanded more. The psychological portraits deepened, Lady Eleanor's glacial calm hiding perhaps a warmer secret with Dr. Gray, Langley's volatility masking vulnerability, Miss Beaumont's desperation, Gray's anxiety, Wither's resentment. The morning's revelations had illuminated shadows, but the heart of the mystery remained veiled. Poirot resolved to press further, for the unseen threads, once pulled, would unravel the entire fabric of lies surrounding Sir Reginald Hawthorne's murder. Chapter 4. The Tangled Lies. The afternoon sun cast long, languid shadows across the manicured lawns of Blackthorn Manor, a deceptive serenity that masked the roiling undercurrents of deceit within its walls. The storm's aftermath had left the air heavy with the earthy perfume of renewal, yet inside, the atmosphere was stifling, thick with the weight of unspoken accusations and half-formed suspicions. Hercule Poirot, his compact form exuding an air of unassailable authority, had summoned the suspects to the drawing-room once more. The room, with its velvet drapes and flickering fire, seemed to close in upon them, transforming it into a stage for the unfolding drama of revelation and denial. Poirot stood before the hearth, his hands clasped behind his back, his egg-shaped head tilted slightly as he regarded the assembled company. The fire's glow danced across their faces, highlighting the lines of tension etched into each one. Lady Eleanor Hawthorne sat rigidly in a high-backed chair, her black crepe dress absorbing the light like a void. Captain Arthur Langley paced near the window, his military stride clipped and restless. Miss Clara Beaumont perched on the edge of a settee, her fingers ceaselessly twisting her pearl necklace as if it were a lifeline. Dr. Mortimer Gray stood apart, his furrowed brow deeper than ever, his hands clasped in front of him like a man in prayer, or perhaps in supplication. Mrs. Agnes Withers hovered at the periphery, her housekeeper's uniform a symbol of her station, though her sharp eyes betrayed a mind far from servile. Inspector Japp lingered by the door, his notebook at the ready, a silent sentinel to the proceedings. The clock on the mantel ticked inexorably, each second amplifying the tension until it was almost palpable. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice resonant with the formal timbre of a Belgian gentleman steeped in the traditions of justice. The little gray cells of Hercule Poirot have been most active. The murder of Sir Reginald Hawthorne is no mere act of passion, but a deed calculated with precision, woven into a tapestry of lies and misdirections. We shall now tug at these tangled threads and see what unravels. He paused, allowing his words to settle like dust in the room. The suspects shifted uneasily, their gazes flickering between Poirot and one another, as if seeking alliances or spotting betrayals. "Let us commence with the physical evidence," Poirot continued, his green eyes scanning the group. The green silk clutched in Sir Reginald's hand, a fabric vibrant and delicate, yet it matches no garment worn by any of you on the night of the murder. A deliberate plant, perhaps. A clue meant to mislead, drawn from some hidden corner of this manor. Lady Eleanor's composure faltered for a moment, her lips parting in surprise. "Then it must have been an outsider," she declared, her voice steady but laced with a hint of desperation. "Someone who slipped in through the garden, committed the deed, and vanished into the storm." Poirot raised a manicured finger. "No, madame. The locked door, with the key inside, it points inexorably to someone within these walls. An outsider would not have the means to lock the door from the inside after the fact. No, the murderer is among us, and they have crafted this illusion with care." Captain Langley ceased his pacing, his scarred cheek twitching. "Illusion? What of the footprints in the mud? They led from the window to the garden, clear evidence of an escape route." Poirot's mustache quivered in amusement. "Ah, the footprints. They are most intriguing. Too large for Mademoiselle Beaumont's delicate feet, too small for your own sturdy boots, Captain. And yet they were deepened deliberately in the soft earth, as if to emphasize their presence. The blood on the thorn in the rose arbor suggests a wound sustained in flight, yet upon examination none of you bear such a mark. A self-inflicted prick, perhaps, to add verisimilitude to the ruse?" Dr. Gray adjusted his spectacles, his voice measured but strained. "This is speculation, Monsieur Poirot. You have no proof that the footprints were staged. Proof, doctor? The little gray cells, they assemble the pieces. Consider the stopped clock in the study, halted at 9:45 p.m., yet Sir Reginald was heard arguing at 10 House p.m. by the maid Elsie. The body was still warm at 10:15 p.m., indicating the murder occurred shortly before discovery. Someone tampered with the clock to obfuscate the timeline, to provide an alibi where none existed." Miss Beaumont gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "An argument? With whom? I was in the library, I swear it." Poirot turned to her, his expression softening momentarily. "The identity of the other party remains elusive, mademoiselle, but the letters found in Sir Reginald's hidden compartment, they speak volumes. Blackmail, a motive most potent. You were not the only one ensnared. Sir Reginald's web extended far." The room erupted in a murmur of shock. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. "Blackmail. My husband was many things, but—" "Indeed, madame," Poirot interjected. "He threatened to expose Mademoiselle Beaumont's youthful indiscretion unless she paid dearly. But perhaps others here felt the sting of his manipulations." Captain Langley rounded on Dr. Gray, his temper flaring like a struck match. You're a doctor. You'd know how to stage a murder, make it look like an intrusion, and your hands shook at breakfast. Guilt, perhaps." Dr. Gray's face flushed with indignation. "Absurd. And you, Captain, were seen near the study by Jenkins at 10 p.m., despite your claims of billiards. A soldier like you, trained in stealth, perfect for slipping in and out undetected." Langley advanced a step, his fists clenched. "Lies. Jenkins is mistaken, or perhaps in on it himself. And what of you, Withers? Skulking about the house like a ghost, knowing every secret passage." Mrs. Withers, who had remained silent, her face a mask of stoic endurance, finally spoke, her voice low and edged with resentment. "I know my place, Captain. The master was harsh, but I served faithfully. Accuse me if you will, but I've no blood on my hands." Poirot raised his hands for silence, his presence quelling the rising storm. Accusations fly like arrows in the dark, but let us illuminate with facts. The dagger, a family heirloom, accessible to all, yet its handle bore a smudged fingerprint, not Sir Reginald's. The murderer wore gloves, perhaps, but removed them in haste to plant the green silk, leaving this telltale mark. Japp nodded from the doorway, his notebook flipping pages. "We've dusted for prints, Poirot. The smudge is partial, but it doesn't match any we've taken yet." "Patience, mon ami," Poirot replied. "The print, it will speak in time. But now a new thread emerges. A red herring, perhaps, or a genuine clue. This morning, in the garden near the footprints, I discovered a missing emerald brooch, rumored to be yours, Lady Eleanor." Lady Eleanor's hand instinctively touched her throat, where the brooch might have rested. "My brooch? It vanished days ago. I thought it stolen by a servant." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Stolen or placed? Deliberately to implicate you. The brooch, encrusted with mud, suggests it was dropped in flight. Yet your alibi, reading in your room, places you far from the garden." She leaned forward, her voice a whisper of urgency. "I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I had no part in this. Reginald's cruelty extended even to me, but murder? Never." The detective paced slowly, his steps measured, each one building the tension. Motives abound. Madame Hawthorne, the inheritance and freedom. Captain Langley, the swindled fortune. Mademoiselle Beaumont, the blackmail. Dr. Gray, the denied funding. Madame Withers, years of indignity. Each thread tangles with the next. He stopped before Miss Beaumont, who shrank under his gaze. "Mademoiselle, your desperation. It is palpable. The letters demand sums you could scarcely afford. Did you confront Sir Reginald that night?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. I thought of it, but I didn't. I stayed in the library, writing to escape my fears." Poirot nodded sympathetically. "Escape, yes, but the human psyche, it seeks resolution in darker ways." Turning to Dr. Gray, Poirot probed further. "Doctor, your research, experimental, controversial. Sir Reginald called it folly. Did rejection drive you to extremes?" Gray's hands trembled anew. "I am a healer, not a killer. My work will vindicate me, with or without his gold." Captain Langley interjected, his voice booming. "What about the argument Elsie heard? If it was at 10 p.m. and the clock stopped earlier, someone was there after the supposed time of death." "Precisely," Poirot affirmed. "The murderer lingered, arranging the scene, stopping the clock, planting the silk, forging the footprints. A meticulous plan, but not flawless." Mrs. Withers shifted uncomfortably, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Sir, the servants' quarters have green curtains. Perhaps the silk came from there. But why implicate me?" Poirot's gaze lingered on her. Why indeed? Resentment festers like a wound untreated. Sir Reginald's barbs, his withheld wages, they accumulate. She met his eyes defiantly. Accumulate, yes, but not to murder. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words pressing upon them. Japp cleared his throat. "Poirot, we've found muddy shoes in the boot room, Langley's size." Langley exploded. "Planted. I tell you, it's a frame." Poirot raised a hand. "Calm, Captain. The shoes, the brooch, the silk, they are knots in the tangle. But the little gray cells, they untie them one by one." As the afternoon waned, Poirot dismissed the group, their faces a mosaic of fear and doubt. Alone with Japp, he confided, "The lies tangle, mon ami, but the truth, it shines through. The murderer believes themselves clever, but hubris is the downfall of many. The manor settled into an uneasy hush, the tangled lies coiling tighter, awaiting the final unraveling in Poirot's masterful deduction. Chapter 5. Poirot's Deduction. The drawing-room of Blackthorn Manor was shrouded in an oppressive hush as the late afternoon light filtered through the heavy velvet curtains, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters across the polished parquet floor. The fire in the grate crackled sporadically, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill that had settled over the assembled company. Hercule Poirot stood before the fireplace, his diminutive yet commanding figure silhouetted against the flames, his hands clasped behind his back in a posture of serene authority. His egg-shaped head was inclined slightly, his green eyes gleaming with the intensity of a mind that had pierced the veil of deception. The suspects, seated in a semicircle of high-backed chairs, regarded him with a mixture of anticipation and dread, their faces etched with the strain of the preceding hours. Inspector Japp positioned himself discreetly by the door, his notebook at the ready, his expression one of quiet deference to the Belgian detective's prowess. The clock on the mantel chimed the hour, its resonant tones echoing through the room like a harbinger of revelation. Outside, the grounds of the manor lay still under a sky bruised with the remnants of the storm, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and unresolved secrets. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice resonant with the formal cadences of a man accustomed to unraveling the intricacies of the human soul. "The time has come for Hercule Poirot to lay bare the truth. The murder of Sir Reginald Hawthorne was no impulsive act born of fleeting passion, but a meticulously orchestrated symphony of deceit, composed with the precision of a maestro. The little gray cells, they have labored tirelessly, sifting through the tangled web of motives, alibis, and misdirections. Now they shall conduct the finale." He paused, allowing his words to permeate the silence, his gaze sweeping over each suspect in turn. Lady Eleanor Hawthorne sat with regal poise, her raven hair catching the firelight, her ice-blue eyes fixed on Poirot with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Captain Arthur Langley, his scarred cheek twitching involuntarily, leaned forward in his chair, his military bearing strained by the weight of suspicion. Miss Clara Beaumont clutched her pearl necklace, her delicate features pale and drawn, her eyes wide with the fear of exposure. Dr. Mortimer Gray adjusted his spectacles, his furrowed brow a testament to his inner turmoil, his steady hands now betraying a faint tremor. Mrs. Agnes Withers stood at the periphery, her pinched face a mask of stoic resignation, her sharp eyes darting furtively as if seeking an escape from the inexorable march of justice. "Let us commence with the scene of the crime," Poirot continued, his tone measured and deliberate. "Sir Reginald Hawthorne, stabbed through the heart in his locked study, the key inside the door, the window ajar with muddy footprints leading to the garden. A scrap of green silk clutched in his hand, a stopped clock marking 9:45 p.m., yet the body warm at 10:15 p.m. These elements, they appear confounding, yet they are the notes from which the melody emerges." He paced slowly before the hearth, his steps precise, each one punctuating his discourse. "The locked door, it suggests an impossible crime, but Poirot knows there is no such thing as impossible, only the improbable cleverly disguised. The key was turned from the outside with a simple tool, perhaps a pair of pliers or a wire, and then replaced through the keyhole. A trick employed by those familiar with the manor's idiosyncrasies. Captain Langley interjected, his voice rough with impatience. "But the footprints, they point to an intruder from the garden, and the blood on the thorn, someone fleeing in haste." Poirot raised a finger, his expression one of gentle reproof. "Ah, Captain, the footprints and the thorn, they are masterful strokes of misdirection. The prints, deepened deliberately in the mud, were made by shoes stolen from your own room, yet too small for your feet, suggesting a frame. The blood on the thorn? A self-inflicted pinprick, administered to lend credence to the illusion of a struggle. No visible wounds among you, yet a glove or sleeve could conceal such a minor injury." Miss Beaumont's voice trembled as she spoke. "And the green silk? It doesn't match any of our attire. Surely it belongs to the killer." "Précisément, mademoiselle," Poirot affirmed. "The silk was not worn but planted, torn from a curtain in the servants' quarters, where such fabrics are commonplace. A detail overlooked by most, but not by Poirot." Dr. Gray cleared his throat, his scholarly demeanor cracking under the pressure. "This is all conjecture, Monsieur Poirot. What of the motives? We all had reasons, as you've pointed out." Poirot's mustache twitched in a faint smile. "Motives, yes. They are the harmony beneath the melody. Lady Hawthorne, the inheritance and liberation from a tyrannical marriage. Captain Langley, the swindled investment and simmering rage. Mademoiselle Beaumont, the blackmail over a youthful indiscretion. Dr. Gray, the denied funding for your experimental research. Madame Withers, the accumulated indignities of years in service to a cruel master." He turned to Lady Eleanor, his gaze penetrating. "Madame, your composure is admirable, yet your avoided glances with Dr. Gray suggest a deeper connection, perhaps a shared secret, but not murder. Your alibi, reading in your room, holds firm, corroborated by the maid's sighting." Lady Eleanor's relief was palpable, though she maintained her dignity. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot." To Captain Langley, Poirot said, "Captain, your temper is your Achilles' heel, but Jenkins's sighting near the study was a mistake, or a deliberate misdirection by another. Your billiard practice, it was solitary, but the stolen shoes point away from you." Langley exhaled sharply, his shoulders relaxing fractionally. "Damned right." Miss Beaumont received a gentle nod. "Mademoiselle, your desperation was real, the letters a torment. Yet you lacked the opportunity. The library logs show your presence there." Tears of relief welled in her eyes. "I knew justice would prevail." Dr. Gray was next. "Doctor, your anxiety, the trembling hands, they stem from professional woes, not guilt. Sir Reginald's refusal stung, but your notes confirm your whereabouts." Gray sighed, adjusting his spectacles. "A weight lifted, monsieur." Finally, Poirot faced Mrs. Withers, his expression grave. "Madame Withers, your loyalty to Blackthorn Manor is a facade, cracked by years of mistreatment. Sir Reginald demeaned you, withheld wages, treated you as less than human. You, who know every nook and cranny, every secret passage and hidden drawer." Withers' face paled, her hands twisting in her apron. "I served faithfully, sir. What reason?" "Reason?" Poirot interjected, his voice rising in crescendo. "Revenge, madame, for a lifetime of slights. You discovered the blackmail letters while cleaning, envied Miss Beaumont's youth and scandal, saw an opportunity to frame her. You argued with Sir Reginald at 10 p.m. as Elsie overheard, demanding fair treatment, perhaps. In rage, you seized the dagger, struck true." The room gasped collectively. Withers shook her head vehemently. "No, I was in the kitchen." "Nah," Poirot thundered. You wore gloves to wield the dagger, removed them to plant the silk, leaving the smudged fingerprint which matches yours, madam, as Jap's dusting confirms. You stopped the clock at 9:45 p.m. to confuse the timeline, lingered to arrange the scene, turned the key from outside, planted the footprints with stolen shoes, pricked your finger for the thorn's blood. The emerald brooch, dropped as a red herring, but it was you who lost it days prior. Withers collapsed into a chair, her defiance crumbling. Sobs racked her wiry frame. He deserved it. Treated me like a dog, year after year. I couldn't bear it any more. When he laughed at my pleas, I snapped. The admission hung in the air like a pall. Poirot's voice softened, tinged with sorrow. Justice, madame, is not vigilante. It is the province of the law. Inspector Jap, if you please. Jap stepped forward, cuffs at the ready. Agnes Withers, you're under arrest for the murder of Sir Reginald Hawthorne. As Withers was led away, the room exhaled in collective relief. Lady Eleanor rose, her voice steady. Monsieur Poirot, your brilliance has saved us from this nightmare. Poirot bowed modestly. The little gray cells, they serve truth. Let this be a lesson. Secrets fester, but honesty illuminates. The manor seemed to breathe easier as evening descended, the shadows retreating before the light of revelation. Dear listener, the storm has passed, and Blackthorn Manor stands silent once more. Join us next time for another tale of mystery, where Poirot's brilliance illuminates the shadows. Good night.